Dear human beings, this is the Ayuscetic podcast. We invite all beings, visible and invisible, to be happy, peaceful, and free. In the course of this conversation, we are going to explore the only constant in this universe, which is change. Let go of whatever comes into your experience. Let go of your anxieties, your anger, your grief. Let also go of your enthusiasm, of your desire for success, money, attention, love and community. This is equanimity. This is mindfulness. This is silence. We know that suffering is inherent in this universe, and therefore we observe what is to be observed. Let us together be in peace, in harmony, in freedom. In the first language there possibly ever has been, named Sanskrit, out of which most modern languages were born. Ayu means life, and Cetic is derived from the word ascetic, which describes a lifestyle of simplicity, mindfulness, and embracing the naked reality of life. In the Ayuscetic family, in the Ayuscetic space, we encourage to patiently listen to details, to seemingly tiny dimensions of existence, in order to create a structured and comprehensive guide to live wholly reverent and to the fullest possible potential of the phenomenon of life. Ayuscetic is for everyone. Ayuscetic is non-exclusive. And Ayuscetic is non-discriminating. We are the statute of pure light. We are the monumental figure of inclusiveness. Our only religion is love, and our only prayer is the breath. We embrace the community of all human beings. Integrity and inclusion is the key to a family of global and universal light. Today, we especially welcome Ramana Krishnan, son, husband, father, and entrepreneur of Fasting Studio, who is going to share with us his experiences with fasting and how to use this powerful tool within community. Thank you. We thank all beings of the universe. We thank all beings there are. May all beings be happy, peaceful, and free.
Haha! Doctor!
Good morning.
Good morning to you as well. I'm very glad that you joined. How are you?
Doing good, Marius. It's the end of the day for us.
So we would rather say good evening, right?
From my side, that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, here it is noon. So good day and good evening. we have the neighbor playing some music, and I propose that we just let him be and integrate the music into our meditations. Is that fine with you?
Yeah. That's very pleasant.
Okay. How has been your day so far?
Today is the Republic Day in India. So it's the day the Constitution came into effect.
I see.
About 71 years back.
Do you celebrate this in any way?
Yes, it is. It is a national day for us. So typically you will have a show of patriotism, and the government organizes a proper march, which is held centrally in the capital. And there's also a show of how the defense has been upgraded and stuff like that. And show of cultures from various states. It's a very big event. It's a national event.
And do you still and also today adhere to the Almond regiment?
The 1 meal a day, yes, of course.
1 meal a day.
Yeah. At the most, a meal a day, I would say. It's something that is so convenient, and I think you get used to it after a point where it's difficult to eat more than that. Eat more times than that. I mean, we can dig deeper on it, and you have your experience as well. I know
that's true.
You're into the yogic concepts also, Hatha yoga in particular.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm actually simply very grateful that we are disposed here at this moment, that we allow us to have this encounter, remembering that it was actually already 1 year ago that we talked about doing this, but for probably some good reason we haven't done until today. And it was back then, I remember, that we actually didn't necessarily talk only about the 1 meal a day or the almond regimen, but we talked about people who have problems with their blood sugar.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if and how we work with them.
That's right. That's right. Post that, you've had fairly success with people with diabetes, right? You were sharing.
I am reluctant actually to use the term diabetes.
Okay.
Because as I understand, as soon as I use this word, I am starting to meddle around with certain industries and economic interests that have their powerful groups of lawyers, of lawyer armies. And well, maybe I'm a little bit too careful in this, but I would say that yes, I have worked, especially with 2 people. One gentleman in his ages of, he was in his 60s already, and just recently with a lady who is 83 years old, and both of them had problems, but different problems with their blood sugar, with their intracellular sugar, so to say. So it was these 2 people, and as I have understood so far, you actually work with a large group of a few dozens of people, right?
Yes. So, see, I have collected data on more than 300 people with various type of fasting and eating, periods of eating and fasting.
Okay.
And for various ailments as well. So, see, I think the the first thing that comes to mind is the effect on blood sugar. The body's blood sugar, I think, is a very direct influence, right? You don't eat, definitely your blood sugars are not going to rise, because the biggest spike that you see in blood sugar is because of something that you ingest. And that's where the blood sugar tends to rise.
Yeah.
See, while you may say that you are intruding on probably the work of doctors, when you try telling people to eat a certain number of times or eat at a particular time, I don't think so. You would also be meddling at all, because see, one is the role of intermittent fasting is currently being used by doctors in India as well.
Yeah.
So do they have the time? Can they actually guide people? I mean, spend time and guide people? Because one is the theory of it is all fine, but the practice of it has its own difficulties for a person in the initial stages.
Yeah, indeed.
Correct, right? See, that's where you come in. Even if a doctor in your country were to refer somebody to attempt intermittent fasting, I think they need someone to handhold and then guide them through it and stay with them through the course, which I doubt many people can volunteer for. Isn't this where you come in, wherever you are?
Yes, well, from my experience, actually, it has even been a blessing, so to say, or benefit that I am not a doctor or a licensed practitioner, but that I am simply a human being who shares experience and who invites people to go along a path together. Usually, with these two people I have worked with, I was sharing a lot of practices with them. So I was committing together to doing a certain fasting and a certain exercise even together. And in that, I always told them that I'm not a healer. I don't heal them, but that they heal themselves, and that there are factors in their lifestyle that are inhibiting their auto-salutogenesis, so to say. And I am just someone who points out these limiting factors, and together we exclude these factors, and then the people start again to grow and to lose adipose, to rest better, and so on.
Marius, how many people are actually advising on lifestyle and probably guiding people through it? Very, very few. And you can't manage any ailments. You can't even manage to keep your health if you're not working on your lifestyle. And lifestyle is not something we're actually teaching people. We're only saying a few things, hand-holding them. It's a lot of trial and error. If people were to try not eating 5 times a day and eating less number of times than 5, I think they will know within a day or two what we are saying. How you feel much better, probably more productive to start with. You're far more productive and far less hungrier the less number of times that you eat, at least. I think that much is very evident. And that is where it starts. And with trial and error, they get to know within a week, are they feeling better or are they not feeling better?
Beautiful.
How then are we going to assign work to people? If somebody isn't keeping well, what choices? Look at the choices he has. He could go to homeopathy, which is a science by itself. You could go to Ayurveda, which is a science by itself. Now, these are all practitioners. They are again certified practitioners. You go to acupuncture, you have certified practitioners. You have everything, but then the single most thing that seems to be making a difference to your life is what you're ingesting and at what time you're ingesting. That is probably the biggest influence.
Yes, and what not.
Yeah. Yeah, and what not. And because you can say exercise. See, you can easily say exercise. I think if you're going to ingest way more than what is required, even your movements become restricted with time. You can't escape it. So even your ability to exercise over a period of time is again going to be dependent on how efficient your metabolism is. And that's somewhere you are going to come to the same question back again. What is your intake? And what exactly do you need? And what kind of work do you have that requires a certain number of expenditure of energy? That's it. because this is something you have to be mindful of. It can't be that you eat something and then say, I'll try and work around. I've eaten so much. Now let me find a way to expend energy, because it's not easy to expend energy. We are fairly efficient, if you notice. And the food companies also are very efficient at giving a lot of calories in a very short period of time. And, a meal can be equal to a day's food. That's exactly the kind of meals that you're looking at. So the food companies are also very, very efficient at what they're doing. So what choices do you have than to consider what we are talking right now?
Well, how actually is the exercise going in those days, Ramana? And how are you experiencing your physical growth?
Yes. See, Marius, typically, you know it well. I typically eat in the evenings. I don't eat too late. I eat probably about 8:39. That's the ideal time that I would love to eat, is about 9 in the evening. So typically you have time from morning till evening. Usually the mornings are typically a run that I would prefer. Pre-COVID, of course, I was able to run outside. The run would be not a very long run. I would typically run something between 5 and 10 kilometers. That's typically what I run. And I usually run barefoot. So usually between, no, it's easier to run barefoot. You don't injure your knees. Because see, if you're going to run, you will have to also know that it's going to hurt your knees if you're not going to land properly. So it's better you run barefoot or run minimally footed, so that your running posture is right. So typically I run in the mornings and weightlifting in the evenings, and then a meal. So I would say it's actually the exercise helps you fast. That's one of the reasons that we exercise. So if you run in the morning, your energy levels are far more stable during the day. So you're not running basically in the morning because it's good to run. It might be good to walk, run, or do some exercise, aerobic exercise in the morning. But actually, I wouldn't actually be doing that or ask people to do it. What I would say is, when you get up, typically, I think if you get little sunlight into your eyes, there is a cortisol that's there in your body. It's much better you go run, expend a little bit of energy and come back, because you can then do works that are mentally demanding. Otherwise, you tend to feel a lot of energy up in the morning. And much of our work is mental work. It's not physical work, right? Our professions are mostly mental work. Marius?
Well, it depends, but I would say in the urban area and the suburban areas, it's mostly mental. That's true, yes. But I just felt very positively triggered in the moment that you mentioned to receive sunlight into the eyes. That actually, that has been one of the major revelations to me in the last few months. First, to practice it myself as early as possible, when the sun is lowest in the horizon, when it's just coming out, and also in the evening again, to have these two cardinal, signals to my nervous system that regulates, so like literally all the hormones into a balance. But also that wasn't the major medicine that I was using with the two clients. But I myself really like to receive a lot of sunlight during the day. People tell me that I would burn myself, but I never burn myself, and it just feels good. But back to the sun gazing, so to say, I did not recommend or propose it to the first gentleman who I worked with 1 year ago when we talked. But this time when I worked with the lady, I saw that her sleep and wake cycle in my eyes was way out of order. So she would get up late at 8 or 9, and she would go to bed late, like at midnight or something. That can be possible, but as I saw her physique, she wasn't even able to walk. So and when she slept, she wasn't sleeping good. So I asked her to actually stand up at 5 in the morning. For her, it was just already an exercise to walk from the from her sleeping room 10 meters to the bare grass. That was like a major effort for her. But then, and when the sun comes out at 6, she was invited to stand bare feet on the grass. It was like wet.
More for grounding, is it?
Exactly, but also nice for her because
earthing. It's called earthing, I think.
Exactly, and she had even memories about this from her childhood, and I think that is also beautiful in a process of healing when we can connect good childhood memories to a healing practice. And I told her, please look the sun every morning. It's so important. And after 2 to 3 days, also she started to not be tired anymore in the afternoons. She was still awake in the afternoons, and that was exactly what I wanted. I don't wanted her to sleep during the day, but to sleep deep and profound during the night.
There's actually a scientific basis for what you're saying. See, in Hindu culture, I come from a Brahmin family from South India. So you offer prayer 3 times in a day. You're obligated to perform prayers 3 times a day. One is early morning when the sun is rising. Second is in the afternoon. And the third is during sunset. Not after the sun is set, but just before the sun is going to set. It's called Sandhya Vandanam, which is basically bowing to the sun at various times during the day. See, that's the philosophy, that could be the culture. But if you look at the scientific basis of it now, what we would accept in science is the way it balances the circadian rhythm. Because circadian rhythm is influenced by light. So if you are waking up and you get rays of sun to go in, we're not talking about sun gazing, we're not asking people to look into the sun. Just go out, and if you're going to offer prayer to the sun, or you don't offer prayer, just go out and think about something else with your morning coffee, but get the light on your face. That's the first trigger for the entire final outcome of that trigger is going to be the cortisol increase that happens in the morning. So which typically means your cortisol peak happens in the morning itself, which means 12 to 14 hours later, your cortisol is almost less. That means the melatonin goes up afterwards. So the best way to balance the circadian rhythm right now, to get it and reset it, seems to be getting sunlight in the morning, and just before sunset, getting that light in
again,
so that your body can set the clock. I think you know this. It's fairly accepted now.
Absolutely. There is an amazing podcast for all the skeptics, or even for you if you want to profound on this, from the Huberman Lab. It's Dr. Huberman. He is a professor at the Stanford University. I will send.
Is it on similar lines? You get it in the morning and try getting it if you can in the afternoon, but typically get it in the evening at least.
Exactly. You're
kind of closing the day, you know. That's when you offer the prayer. You offer the prayer in the morning to the sun to start the day. Mid-afternoon you offer, but the significance of the evening prayer is you close your day. You close your day when the sun sets.
I see.
So I think that's where the sleep cycle starts after that, I guess.
There is great beauty in when modern science, with their very sometimes tunnel view, but very precise view, when they can confirm and connect to ancient practices, and they can meet each other. That's true.
See, I think that the intersection of both is what you can accept and practice. If the intersection isn't there, it's very difficult to say, because see, one side, something has been practiced for a very long time. That can be safe, but is it necessary is a question. But if you throw something as science, do you know it's safe? Because we can't know. It takes time to know whether something is safe and something works. Something looks to be true is what science can give you. It looks logical is what science can say. But does it work is something only time tells. So I think if you can have tradition and science agreeing on similar things, those are things that I think we can easily take it up and start practicing.
I will definitely send that the link of the podcast to you and put it also in the description. They go into the very biochemical terms about there are specific cells that have very complicated names in the eyes that then regulate the whole nervous system and so on. But we don't need to get into this here.
But it's fairly acceptable. I think the work of Dr. Sachin Pandam and all that, it's all on these lines. So I think for a layman, I think you get sunlight in your eyes, get it in the evening. See, in India, when you select a house, it's a practice in India. See, they don't go so deep into the eyes and self names, because fundamentally for a common man, he wants to know what to do. What is he going to do with the diagram of the eye? See, when we select a house in India, the fundamental rule in selecting a house is they see how much of natural sunlight do you have. See, it's not about how many bulbs you can fit.
Beautiful.
See, with artificial light, you can fit any number of bulbs in a room, make it bright or dark or whatever you want.
Yeah.
But actually in India, you tend to look at houses and rate them on the basis of natural sunlight. More natural sunlight, more is it valued. That is where you will actually look at houses that are north facing. You have an entire science behind it called Vastu Shastra. But it has other dimensions.
What is the name? Excuse me?
Vastu Shastra.
Oh, how do we write? How do we write that?
Vastu. Vasthu. Vastu. It's a very, very popular science originating from India. Similar to the Feng Shui of China, right? Which goes into many other things. But Vastu Shastra is specific to, that's the name. That's specific to how a house can be constructed. Where should a bedroom be? Where should the kitchen be? And all.
Yeah.
It's all to do with the air, light, earth, of course, and fire. These are the things. And of course, something more. Ether, of course. They look at the 5 elements and how they play. But fundamentally, in India, you would not be looking at taking a house that has very little natural sunlight. Now, that's the previous generation. My dad's generation was very particular about it. See, but the generation now, who probably are young and coming, working and trying to buy a flat, probably they'll be looking at resale value, looking at the builder's name, looking at the locality with no sunlight, mind you. Look at the problems that you're encountering. You can look at the statistics associated with it. You will understand that most depressed people don't want to expose themselves to sunlight. Now, is it that you avoided sunlight that's been the cause? Or is it an effect? You can debate on it. But I think it makes so much sense to expose yourself to light, at least for brief periods of time in the morning and in the evening. I mean, you can agree on DNA damage. You don't have to tan your skin. But I think just that little bit of light in the morning and evening, I think, is something we can all agree upon. That's not debatable, I think. That's, I think, the intersection that we can talk about. Correct?
Well, I'm really so grateful that this topic came up. I didn't expect it to come up, but it's powerful. And I agree. Sometimes I myself, I'm not actually, usually I like to be in the sun, but not always. But especially in the moments when I feel, I would like to kind of retire and be with myself and isolate myself. That's exactly the moments when I notice that I get the greatest benefits in being outside. Being outside, even naked during the day, or being in the sun looking at the sun in the morning, the evening. So sometimes it's that spark of will that we need to actually say, okay, now it's the time to be with the sun, because it's there for a good reason right now at the moment, and we will.
And Marius, the second point of barefoot running. On the barefoot running, the science of it, I won't see. There are two things that I agree with it, and I can tell you science on one of it. The other one is only an experience, is not science. See, barefoot running is typically your landing of your foot is fairly correct. See, if you look at any elite runner or anyone who's running at a competitive level, the fundamental is you need to land on your mid foot or on your toes. You don't land on your heel.
Exactly.
See, for common people like you and me, if you were to wear a shoe which has a big heel and then you try running, the first step is you're going to land on your heel. That's how you land. You're not trained to run with a shoe. So if you want to run with a shoe, you really have to train to land mid-foot or on the toes. Otherwise, you're braking. Each time you land, you're actually braking, because each time you land on your heel, you brake. That's the damage that happens to your knee. See, running itself, you can ask, is it damaging? But I would say, if you're going to land on your heel, even a runner won't accept it. A trained runner won't accept it. That's not the way to run. You need to land on your midfoot or on your toe. Now you need to train yourself for over a year to get it right. Then you have to get your neck right. Then you have to get your hands right. You have to get the whole thing right. Or just run barefoot. You can't run on your heel. You will land on your toes and midfoot. That's how you can run if you don't wear a shoe. So if you don't want to spend too much time training how to run, just run barefoot or be minimally footed. It's called zero drop. It's very popular now. Just buy a shoe which is like a canvas shoe, which is flat. It doesn't have a ratio, a drop ratio. That is, the heel isn't tall and then slopes down. As long as there is zero drop, you tend to run probably very, very optimally. That's the science that I can say on barefoot running or minimally footed running. The experience of it, I agree with what this lady said, that when she stood, she could experience memories of her childhood. Because when I run barefoot, one is the connection. Now you can say connection isn't important. Yes, I understand. We don't have to give the science. But emotionally, you feel wonderful. It's not the same. See, even if you give a guy a minimal footwear, which is flat, it's not the same. You just run barefoot or walk barefoot. I don't think you need to run barefoot. Even if you walk barefoot, I think one is there's a joy. I can't explain why. Even if you walk, you have it. Just the feeling of the earth and connection to it. Though you may not regard the connection very highly, or you may just not look at all these things, you can feel it. It's very evident that you can feel these sensations. You can feel connected to the earth. Somewhere, some form of authenticity is what you feel. I can't explain more than that. It's an experience. And it triggers memories. I completely agree. When you run, I don't know how, but your childhood memories come and you tend to see them and you tend to get over them for some reason. You learn your lessons and move on. There's nothing that gets stuck onto you and holds you onto your past. I don't want to talk too much on the psychology, but the truth is that most people who are running barefoot are actually not running because it's a more efficient form of running. They're actually running for the joy of running and because of the memories that I say, they just come. And you can feel your entire life as you're running. We don't tell that. All we say is, yeah, it's a more optimal way to run. That's what we would say. Not to be ridiculed. That's why we do that. I know it's a long, I said, but I hope you concur. I mean, your experience has been similar.
Yes, I was absolutely, I am absolutely aware with what you say, and I have nothing to add. Maybe no, because well, I connect in that sense that I actually also started to do it because it just felt well, and then later on, like from research and from reading and from seeing content on the internet, I found like all these then also interesting hints, where there's still lacking a lot of research, but that we have probably several benefits also, like all the alignment of the spine that depends on how we touch the ground, and you also mentioned the neck. Well, but there is actually I would like to ask you something of another topic that that makes me feel very curious about. Have you worked with people who were dependent or on any prescriptions of insulin?
Yes. Yes. With regard to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
See, I've worked with many people. I would say, type 2 diabetes, I would have worked with more than 129 cases because we've documented about 129 cases. Nice. I would have actually worked on over 250 cases at least. Documentation is probably for about 129 people that we have a clear record, how it started and how it moved on. Out of 129 people, I would say about 40 people were already on insulin. They were, it's type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
Now, that's because of insulin resistance now, mind you. So we're not talking about type 1 diabetes, where enough insulin production is not there. It's type 2 diabetes, which is because of insulin resistance. Now, over there, the sugar levels are not being managed with the tablets the kind of metformin combination tablets that are typically given. The sugar levels are still high. It's only over there when the HbA1c, the A1C typically goes beyond 12, even with tablets, and there's no hope. That's when the doctor actually kind of speaks to the person and says, look, try taking insulin. And in a country like India, I've worked with people in India, in US, I've worked in UK, people living in UK, and so these and most of these countries, and Botswana. So I have cases from out here. So typically, that's when the doctor typically tells the person to have insulin also. Take the shot of insulin and then take the tablets that's required in addition to it. Typically, there's a lot of resistance from the person because that's the ultimate insult to that person. The moment you start taking the insulin injection, that's when you tend to feel you're old. And many of these people are less than 50 years of age. They tend to think that. Usually you tend to think people over 60, 70 are the ones who take these insulin injections. But if somebody is like 35, 40, you can't accept it. You tend to feel that I'm very old. And they rebel against it. But the doctor still insists there's no other alternative. They take it. I can give you my cases. Very clear. Most of the people, very surprisingly, Marius, people who are diabetic can easily do 1 meal a day. This is what you'll find it very surprising. If they have high blood sugar levels, they actually don't experience hunger at all. They only experience hunger when they're either swallowing those metformin combination tablets or taking insulin, which rapidly brings down your blood sugar levels. And you need to eat something. You need to eat something immediately in response to it. If your sugar levels are high, the first thing is they are not hungry. Most of the diabetic people with high sugar levels, I'll give you one of my, somebody who's a yoga teacher. His blood sugar levels were 396. And I was doing a diploma in yoga at SVASA. It's a university in Bangalore. I had gone there and he was also studying there and he was a yoga teacher. Now I told him, look, this is your sugar level 396. Why don't you attempt this? And then he said, I'll try. What is this? You know what? He didn't eat for 3 days straight. Forget about not eating 1 meal a day. He didn't eat for 3 days straight because it took 3 days for his sugar level to come down to 140 from 396.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now you can say whatever you want.
Reserves there. Yeah.
Don't they all have? Please tell me, don't they all have? You're talking about a condition of insulin resistance. You know for sure that they have, most of the people with type 2 diabetes are also having issues with the liver. Fatty liver is something that you expect with type 2 diabetes medications. You swallow these medications, you are going to have some degree of fatty liver. It's not rocket science. And many of these people, sugar levels are 396. You fast them for 1 day. The typical sugar levels that come down are 70 points. This is about what it comes down per day of fasting. This is what we see in practice. You fast 1 day, your sugar level comes down by 70 points. So imagine with somebody with 396, it would take him 3.5 days even to get to something like 140 or 150 in the sugar levels. That is when they start feeling hungry. And they say, we like to eat something. So that means they actually don't feel hungry at all. So this is one thing that I wanted to say. But secondly, as far as the people who are on insulin, nearly all people give up insulin on day 1. It's only the prescription medicines that take time.
That was also my experience. Good. I feel relieved.
You give up on day 1. You actually don't even I can tell you, Marius, in fact, the best way to do it is they reduce the medication the previous night. If they used to taking a certain number of units, let's say 10 units, or take hypothetically a certain number of units. It's better they take a little less. They take 20-30% less the previous night. So that in the morning, they have slightly elevated sugar levels. Anyway, the sugar levels are elevated. They have slightly elevated sugar levels, and then you can fast. If you're going to take a very high dosage of insulin, you'll wake up with something like 100 on the sugar. Now, when you get up at 100, you're actually waking up hungry, in fact. You've taken so much insulin that you're waking up hungry. See, this is the question we need to ask. People who are taking insulin, are they waking up hungry? They just get up in the morning with hunger. Doesn't it make sense to reduce the insulin a little bit and wait a little longer so that the hunger comes naturally and you kind of postpone your meal in the morning as long as possible?
Exactly.
If healthy people with healthy blood sugar levels, see, healthy levels in India by the kind of meter that we have is something like 80 to 100, 80 to 100, 110 on fasting by our index. A healthy person wakes up at like 80 or 85 and he's going without food till afternoon in the name of intermittent fasting. If somebody is waking up with levels of 200 and 250, I think they don't need to eat something in the morning, right? They can go till afternoon more easily. Marius, what do you feel?
I feel just so happy to listen to you. I mean, when we consulted with the lady, also with the presence of her son, who was the man who helped her to implement all the changes that we agreed upon, we weren't sure. He asked me, should she stop to take the insulin? Should she take less? What is with, she was also taking other medications. Should she take this or that? And I just looked at him and told him, I'm not a doctor. I cannot recommend to take you anything or not take you anything. I can just tell you that I don't believe in these medications. And that I cannot take responsibility or recommendations for doing this or that or not doing this or that. So eventually I told him that he should go with his gut feeling, which obviously also left me a little bit shivering, like with some anxiety if something goes wrong, like the gut feeling. I mean, there is no science in that, supposedly. But at the same time, his gut feeling was right, because one day later, he looked at me and he smiled and he was like, I haven't applied any more insulin to her. And I smiled to him and I said, yes, nice. And for about 2 or 3 days, they applied nothing until she asked for something. She asked if she could have some insulin, please. And I mean, then he gave it to her, but in very little dosages, before she was already taking incredible amounts after 20 years of dependence on the injections.
Why do you see the medications have their role? The allopathic medications.
Yes.
I mean, you have many different type of medications, and you know homeopathy well if you're from Germany. See, medications have their role to play. What we must understand is, what is the amount? See, if you're going to eat multiple meals a day and you're not going to be careful about what you eat, it's better you take these medications. It's better.
And yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
See, these medications, see, why are they life-saving? Why are they magic? I would say they are magic. I'll tell you why. You don't need to change your lifestyle.
Yeah, this is why.
You can just have this.
I would call it
you can continue doing what you're doing.
Or destructive
That's right.
magic.
You can just continue to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Continue to drink the Coke and all that you can continue doing. And take these tablets, just enough to manage your levels. Until a point that you can't manage with these tablets, then you progress further to a different type of tablets. And then you progress further to insulin itself. And then your own healthcare provider will tell you that please do something about your food. They will come back to you with the same request. Marius, see, if you will ask people a fundamental, I think you would know it, dieting yourself. If you will ask people to eat less, it's going to be really difficult. Anyone will accept that they're less than 1% of the population which is capable of calorie restriction, that is eating less. It's far easier to eat less number of meals than it is to eat less.
Yes.
It's just, you can say experience, you can try, check out for yourself. Is it easier to eat less or is it easier to eat less number of times? And you'll get the answer. if you're going to eat less number of times, that's the impact you're going to have on your blood sugar.
Yeah, we both have experimented with this, I think, and I agree with you. Then that also reminds me of the other aspect that I thought about while listening to you already a few minutes ago, and that was the point that we are also kind of conversing on a very high level here with the 1 meal a day, for example, or 1 meal in 3 days. Meanwhile, other people, like you mentioned, some people, they are at 5, 6, or even 7 meals. And for them, when I tell them 3 days, they think that I'm crazy or that they would die. But when, for them only to have 2 meals, that would be like very restrictive and very challenging. So in the case of that lady, I also wanted to share that with you because I would really like to know what you think about it, or how do you feel when you listen to that. When she arrived at the place where I was, before we started any process together, before we knew each other, I just observed her and her son from the far. I was living as a neighbor to them, and it occurred like 2 or 3 times that I heard him shouting all over the hotel place, calling his sons to come to him and to help. And I thought, like, what was happening there? What is the problem? Later, I found out that as he was measuring her blood level, her blood glucose, it was so radically low. Like,
Yes.
I think I don't know, I don't remember exactly the measurements that he used, but I think it was 25. So it was like almost in a coma, right? And
that's right.
But then the basic problem that I saw was not that she had sometimes low blood sugar, but that afterwards, every time he takes pure brown sugar or any other processed sugar, and he kind of stuffs it into her face.
That's right.
In order to make it rise. So to let's say, in the moment, I understand it because he feels very anxious. He feels full of fear that she would die.
He should.
And
he should.
He should.
That's the body warning you, because you are experiencing a low glucose state. Your body should warn you. That's right.
Yeah. And at the same time, he just wants the symptom to go away. He just wants the blood sugar to rise. But at the same time, we know how the hormones and how the insulin works. As soon as we eat sugar, it rises, but later it drops even more. And I told him, I told that to him before we started any therapy. I told him, if you continue with this, if you continue to feed her any sugars like this, you will just save her for a few minutes or for a few hours. But in a few days, she is really dead, because every time the blood sugar will drop even lower. So, and that was the moment when he realized what is actually happening, and when he asked me if I could work with her. But you know that what we did was simply literally to cut out any sugar, even complex carbohydrates. I asked her, what do you like to eat? She mentioned me a lot of foods, nothing of carbohydrates in it. She just liked fish, eggs, meat. Yes. And so literally we put her actually on a ketogenic diet. And since then she doesn't eat any gram of sugar anymore, and she does not take the insulin anymore. But I know that would be interesting to hear from you, because I'm as I remember, you don't work with any animal products, right?
You see, we have our difference of opinions, and again, see, that's the thing, right? We have to try different things, and we'll have our own experiences associated with it.
Yeah.
See, the first thing is, clearly this lady has been over medicated. I think any healthcare professional also will kind of agree.
Would agree. Okay.
What happens with the healthcare professional is, people are not consistent with their habits. They eat more one day, they eat less one day, they eat more at different times during the day. there's no consistency in eating patterns.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the most basic. You sleep at a particular time, you eat at a particular time.
Yes.
Any culture, I see that's what you call as civilized. What you call as civilized is the fact that you've developed convenience to the extent that
Yes.
you can regularly sleep at a particular time and you can
Civilization.
regularly
Yes.
eat at a particular time. That's what you have earned with technology and all that, right?
I see. Mhm.
It's not that you just pick up the food and eat. That means you can be more consistent with your times of what you eat. You can be more consistent even in your calorie intake.
Yes.
Because earlier it used to be fast and feast. You feast some days and then you don't get anything at all. So the entire technology, whatever civilized approach, whatever we have become more civilized from a caveman, that means you can sleep at a particular time without worrying that some animal is going to eat you. You can eat at particular times. Every culture would have given that significance to sleeping at a particular time and eating at specific times. I don't think so. It can be random that people eat just like that. They need to eat at particular times, even if they're eating more number of times.
Yes.
So if people can be consistent with the eating pattern,
Okay.
the healthcare professional can find out what is your right dosage. He could have given you the right dosage. See, because when people go to the healthcare professional, they've done something wrong. They're eating very haphazardly, probably indulging more. That's when the problem starts. They go to the healthcare professional, he's giving a dosage which is to that type of living. And then when you moderate your living, the dosage becomes a little high. So with insulin, the problem is almost every day, you're now juggling every day because it works instantly.
Okay.
Now you need to juggle with the medicine because you are not consistent with your eating pattern. Nor the time, maybe the time, but the quantity of food. And when you eat more and when you eat less, what type of food you eat, you're not consistent. If you're eating something wrong, at least be consistent about how you eat it every day. You can manage your medications to that extent. That's what any healthcare professional will do, right?
Yes.
They kind of give you the medication for managing blood sugar levels of a particular type at a particular time. There, I think it has gone wrong because the medications I think she's completely overdosed over there. I think that, I would say, would have to be checked first. Because if they're experiencing low sugar, yes, you need to give the sugar at that point in time because it's very, very uncomfortable for that person. You have to get that person out of trouble. But they have to rethink on the medication that's been given. You don't need to give that much of medication. Yes, you should also correct the food, get the pattern right of eating, get the dosing right for that pattern, and then actually look at whether do you need it at all. That's exactly what you have also done, right, Marius?
Yeah, well, like according to what you say, it would have definitely been prudent to consult with a healthcare professional who
See, the
knows
healthcare
about
professionals
about
also,
the
Marius,
application
they
of
need
insulin. Yeah.
the healthcare professionals also, Marius, they need your cooperation, the patient's cooperation. The patient outlines what they are doing. That's what they are trying. See, they are virtually at the mercy of your sugar levels. Your sugar levels are at the mercy of what you're eating and at what time you're eating. You have to develop a consistent pattern of eating. You can't ask the doctor what you're going to eat. It's not going to work. They're not nutritionists. Nutritionists are not curing type 2 diabetes.
No.
You'll have to figure out what eating pattern appears reasonable for you, considering your appetite, satiety, and health. If you actually ask that question, you'll get the answer. I think that's the answer you've provided here.
I have another question regarding this. If we don't eat any carbohydrates, if we, for example, fast, or if we do an exercise, or if we eat a spoon of coconut oil or something, or any other thing that has nothing to do with carbohydrates, are there any activities that naturally cause a release of insulin in the body?
Not insulin. Your blood sugar levels could still go up, but not insulin. It doesn't happen.
So insulin only happens with carbohydrates, right?
Yes. I mean, not only with carbohydrates. It also happens with protein, but the amount of insulin is very small. See, carbohydrates will generate a much higher response of insulin.
Mm-hmm.
The protein and the rest generate far lesser.
Exactly.
Far lesser. See, finally, everything converts into sugars only, right? At the end.
Mm-hmm.
Except fat, that is. Everything converts into sugars, right?
Yes.
Only the fat is digested in the liver. Other than that, whatever you say, protein has to finally be converted into sugar. But the amount of insulin that you're triggering with protein, pure protein, is very less. So typically what happens is, if the amount of insulin is less, that is when you can actually, your fat reserves also can be accessed. Mm-hmm. If the amount of insulin that's been secreted is very high, you can't access your fat reserves at all, which is typically the condition that you will see in many of the type 2 diabetic patients. What you need to ask them to do is ask them to check their fasting insulin levels. Mm-hmm. You'll get the shock. Many of them have very high fasting insulin levels. And again, they're taking insulin. Again, they're taking prescription medicines, metformin combinations. For what? You already have very high fasting blood insulin levels. And now you're taking things to trigger more insulin.
Yeah.
Something is wrong, right? So that's what you call insulin resistance.
Yeah. If I understood it right, actually, so far, there was a nice metaphor that I heard once in a presentation from a university. They made the metaphor that the insulin is like someone who is making a, how do we say, when we move from one house to another house, how do we call that? What is the name in English when we leave a house where we lived and we go with all our belongings? Shifting. Yeah. So they say that insulin is like a being who is shifting, and the carbohydrates are like the furniture, our belongings in the house. So the insulin is the human being who takes the furniture and puts it into the cell, and the cell is like the house. So what I felt in her case, for example, was, well, if the house is full, if it's full of furniture, if it's packed with belongings, you cannot even enter the cell anymore. You cannot even go into the house because it's so full. Then it's simply because there is like enough. So we don't need to eat more. And she didn't want to have any more. So this is also why her pancreas is not producing the insulin anymore, because the body sees, okay, all the cells are stuffed with energy.
Yes.
We don't want any more to enter in at the moment. We don't produce insulin. So it's like that matter. We don't need more human beings to carry more furniture into the house if it's full.
Yes. See, I think, you're getting to the same thing. I think perfectly well understood. And somewhere along, you have to clear the sugars that are already there in the system. You make them fast. You make them to eat something that's not triggering, that's not putting in too much of sugars back, triggering too much of insulin response, because you can't use the sugars you already have. So I understand that. The only issue with the ketogenic diet for somebody like me is, it's not if I'm a vegetarian. Mm-hmm. See, if you look at our, by tradition, we are vegetarians. There's a sect in
I understand.
India called Brahmins. So as a sect, for centuries, we are all vegetarians. We're not supposed to eat egg as well. Yeah, though I see a lot of people in our community actually taking egg. Vegetarians in India still giving the children egg because they feel there is some protein that's required. So they are doing it, but by tradition, we're not supposed to have even eggs. So this is what has come from tradition. And you can't tell these people, you can't tell me to eat non-veg or eggs, because it's not something I've done from my childhood. And even for health, it's going to be difficult for me to accept it. We would rather accept a little less level of health and still be a vegetarian, or find supplements, but it's not something that we can accept. As a tradition. See, I'm not going to say anything on science. We can't accept it. See, the thing with ketogenic diet, if you were to try, it's difficult to do a ketogenic diet with vegetarian options. It's very difficult.
It's hard, yes.
You could try it, but it's very difficult. Because see, fundamentally, ketogenic diet is all about reducing the amount of carbs. That's what it finally is.
Yeah.
See, people can say we put in a lot of fat, we put in protein, or you have more fat, a little lesser of protein, and then very little of carbohydrates. 5% of your calories coming from carbohydrates.
Yeah.
That's what we are looking at.
Yeah.
It's difficult for a vegetarian to do it.
That's true. Well,
it's difficult.
I really respect.
I mean, there's no options. There are almost no options.
Yes, and I even bow my spirit in front of you. I see true beauty in this.
But that's see, we used to it. That's what we have done from our child. See, like you probably have grown with fish, eggs, and meat, and that's something that you've taken from your childhood. Forget about the science. I'm just saying, by tradition, you've probably been accustomed to all that. Maybe your microbiome also can accept it. But for somebody who's never had it from childhood, you tend to feed him now. I'm not too sure even the microbiome can adapt to that extent as what you've had. Somebody can have it for pleasure, but I'm not too sure the microbiome also will be very acceptable to such kind of a change in diet. So that's the difference in tradition between us. And you're trying something and I'm trying something. So I try to get all the people that I speak to, my recommendation has been vegetarian. See, the science is you can say a lot, both ways, right? There are things to say both ways, for and against both. So that's there. There's no clear guidance because it's how you read it. Somebody who's biased like me to be a vegetarian would probably consider all the facts that are there about vegetarian, pro-vegetarian, links of dairy to, type 1 diabetes in children and link of red meat to colon cancer. And at the same time, you can come up with things saying, look, all those studies were not conducted well, because all these things are going to take time. They really are going to take time. But I could kind of ask you to read a book called The China Study. That's the longest survey that's been done on nutrition. And you can go through it. You can, if that's acceptable to you all. But then, see, let me be honest, Marius. I will say everything is disputable. Even if I throw one paper, you can throw me 3 more papers that will actually show that leucine is available only here. BCAAs are only available in animal protein. Animal protein are superior proteins. Correct, right? It's fairly acceptable in the scientific community. Animal protein is superior protein. That's how they refer to it always. And more protein is good. But then again, there's a longevity science. Reduce the amount of protein. There's no clear-cut answer. It's what you want to believe. Yes, there is enough data for both sides, but I don't know. How would you put it?
Well, I actually have I just put the China study on my list, so I will definitely. I found the audiobook. I will.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying. See, for every one book I name, you can name 3 books. You'll say carnivore diet.
Beyond,
you can give me 3 more things. Yeah, you can say, look, carnivore diet. Testimonial, that person had psoriasis, he's responded so well to it. Just removing the carbs. See, I know what you're saying. I do read quite a bit on that as well. I don't know what to say. It's just that I'm biased towards it.
Right now, really, brother, I actually feel very close to you. And I think beyond the duality that we might be experiencing, there is a far greater truth than us. And there is something very nice that you will actually like to hear that I would like to share with you regarding this. But do you allow me to refill my cup of water?
Yeah.
Give me a short recession. Thank you.
Yeah.
Be back with you in a moment. Thank you very much for the patience. Salute.
How much water do you consume, Marius, in a day?
Oh, that's a good question. It varies. Indeed, it varies. I have been experimenting a lot with dry fasting also. For example, not consuming any liquids until noon. And like I would actually say that approximately it's roughly 1 until 1.5 liters per day. But sometimes there are also days when I don't drink anything, or other days when we are active outside all the day, then I like to lick on a crystal of salt and drink a lot of water. It's nice. Yes.
Can I ask you some questions? You've asked me quite a bit. I'm equally curious about a few things, and because only you can have exposure to those.
You're very welcome.
Can I? Or would I be deviating?
Yes, you're very welcome. Although I would really like to
Okay.
to say something that feels to me very or it feels like it connects actually what we have been talking about right now, like in a peaceful way. Is that fine before you ask the questions?
Yeah. That's fine. Please.
In that case, I just felt the necessity to invite two very powerful entities here into the conversation. The one entity is the spirit, I would call it, like this primordial neutral energy that potentially can be anything that it wants to be. And the second entity would be the ancestors, in my case, some particular ancestors. And the spirit and the ancestors, well, they also have to do a lot with each other. But in that case, I call them two because there are two beautiful aspects from them both. So first of all, I think probably we are not here to ask who we are or to find out who we are, but I think we are here to actually be what we want to be. So it's sometimes nice to ask the question, who am I, or why am I here, or something, but it's also for me it feels correct, it feels divine to say I am, and I want to be this, and I realize to be this, and so on. This is like this spirit energy that can create anything that it wants to be. So in that case, when I ask myself, do I want to kill other beings my whole life and eat them? Surely I know that I don't want to do this. From my spirit, I know that this is not an eternal way. It's not a completely divine way. And that I actually, although right now I'm not practicing it daily, that I know that my spirit, that the spirit that I live wants to be healthy, strong, and to live a long life with a lot of muscles, with a lot of muscle mass, without killing other animals, but with finding regenerative resources of proteins that allow me to build this material structure, right? And so, and then the other entity of the ancestors comes in and reminds me, yes, indeed, my Celtic Druid ancestors, for example, they were not necessarily these barbaric carnivores that just were eating raw meat all the time. There were actually also some very sophisticated cultures and traditions who knew how to make potions from herbs, to ferment things, and so on.
Yes.
And I think there exactly is a very, very interesting solution to this that I want to experiment since a lot of time. But right now I actually just have acquired the material resource to do the experiment. We can maybe talk again when I have done it. And that's the use of amino acids, which we both have practiced.
Yes.
I think you are also practicing it at the moment, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And these are, well, very bioavailable substances from that can be and most of the times are derived from bacterial fermentation. So that would apply vegan or vegetarian, right?
Yes.
But then there came something very interesting that I found. If you are interested, I can send you the research to this. And it seems like there was actually a military research. I don't remember the date from when it was, but it was longer a while ago. And the aim of their research was to identify the perfect amino acid ratio of the essential amino acids that can be hopefully 99% be metabolized by the body. When I told this another doctor friend a short while ago, he said that that's not possible, that's crazy. I have sent him the research, but he hasn't answered to me since then. Maybe he didn't have the time. But from a lot of other doctors who talk about this research, my understanding is, and I also have looked into the paper, that they did indeed identify what they call the master amino acid pattern. And the beauty of this is that this is, as the bioavailability of this ratio is so high, we need to consume very, very, very little of this. And now comes factoring into this, the caloric restriction that you mentioned also, because the experiment that I'm going to conduct on myself and that I have heard from other doctors who conducted it on themselves is that they fast, for example, for 3 days. They have 10 grams of this perfect ratio in the morning and 10 grams in the evening. And the calories are like what I think like 40 kilocalories, or was it 80?
Yes.
It's
it has to be,
very low.
Yes, because each gram of protein is about 4 calories, right? 4 to 6 calories.
So then that would be 40, right? Yeah,
4
each
calories
gram,
about,
and
that's right.
So we have
typically 10
80
grams
calories per day, 40 in the morning and 40 in the evening, kilocalories.
Okay.
And I think, of course, this has a little effect on the autophagy. It deactivates it a little bit. But if we consider to do this for 3 days, then we have in 3 days, I mean, it's still a very radical caloric restriction. But at the same time, supposedly, the availability of these amino acid ratio is so adequate that the muscle growth that can be experienced in these 3 days, while growth hormone even increases up to 72 hours, it seems almost unnatural, right? But
very interesting.
That seems interesting to me.
No, it is. It is interesting what you're saying.
Now, I will put the link of the research in the description, definitely.
Please. I think leucine features prominently in that, right? It's typically 5 grams of leucine with 5 grams of whey protein should. Well, I mean, that's okay. I know you have your own thing, but I definitely can relate to what you're saying.
I think it wasn't 5 grams of leucine, but yeah, we could figure that out in another moment. But
that's okay.
Or you take 5 grams of leucine?
No, I don't. I take about maximum 1.5 to 2 grams. It's typically up to 3 grams. That's what, if you look at the Amen protocol by Dr. Noon Amun-Ra, see, giving due credit to him, he had defined it pretty well. It's up to 3 grams per amino acid. I think he had put it very beautifully. So, see, I was going through a presentation today by one of the universities. What they had done a small research was, you give somebody 25 grams of whey. You give that person 5 grams of whey and give a person 5 grams of whey with 5 grams of leucine. The 5 grams of whey with 5 grams of leucine, the protein synthesis seems to be better than even 25 grams of whey.
Of what? Of whey?
Whey protein, W-H-E-Y.
W-H-E.
Whey protein.
Whey from the cow. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, from the cow, the milk derived whey. So instead of taking 25 grams of whey protein, you take just 5 grams of whey protein with 5 grams of leucine. That seems to be having a trigger for protein synthesis which is higher than 25 grams of whey protein.
Also interesting.
Anyway, that's I think the point that I was trying to make was, yes, I think there is a ratio of amino acids that I think people can, I think if we can identify, that will be perfect. We don't need too much protein, but you need the right ratio of the amino acids. I would definitely see a lot of sense in what you're saying. It's just what kind of number is it, and maybe experience and study. And we can't wait for people to do a study. It's going to take a very long time, but at least we could try it and practice. I'll be very interested, Marius, if you could do it when it's available, that is.
And we will find peaceful ways to live a long, healthy life without killing other beings. Definitely.
Marius, I think, see, you've grown up in a certain way where it was very acceptable for you to eat these things. See, life itself is violence, right? So there's a saying that's quoted often. Hitler was a vegetarian. Look what all he did. Look what all he did, right?
Yes.
So life itself, human life itself is complete with a lot of violence on a day-to-day basis.
And paradoxes.
Yes, and paradoxes. See, we inflict a lot of pain and violence on other human beings as well in our work, in our whatever day-to-day movement, family members in some way or the other. And there's also a certain harm that we inflict on animals. In the end, net ratio, we'll have to take it out. Each of us have to ask how much of harm have we done. So I can't say that you have committed less harm than me. I can't see it that way at all. You're doing something that you feel comfortable doing at the moment. I'm doing something that I feel comfortable doing at the moment. But the quest is on, right? That's all we are. We are in place.
Nice. I'm happy that you're comfortable.
No, I did say I'm biased. I didn't say I was right.
No, but it's very good to know that we are both comfortable. I think that's good news. So, see, it's a journey and you will find what fits you. See, you're continuing to do something because there doesn't seem to be repercussions. You seem to be benefiting in some way, either mental or physically, from what you're consuming. See, even if you look at the interviews of Dr. David Sinclair, he also says a few things, which I'm just quoting. If he were to eat for taste, he said he would eat steak every day. He's Australian, and he said he would eat a steak every day. And he says the only reason that he's kind of given up non-veg and has it once in a while is because he wants to restrict his proteins, because somewhere he feels it could go against longevity. At the same time, you could also see research going on that as you age, you need a very high, you must be able to maintain a high level of muscle, lean muscle, for you to age more gracefully. You can see you have to consume protein. Yes, you need to also work, exercise. That's also a trigger for all this. But you need to consume protein as well. And in this fight, is exercise enough to trigger protein synthesis? The study that I was going through today said yes. You need exercise to trigger protein synthesis. That trigger is more important than the food itself. But then if you can combine it with foods that have leucine, I think your trigger can be much higher. So if muscle protein, lean muscle is your only goal, you're better off consuming animal products. I think you can probably see more success that way. Longevity, I think you'll be dragged this way. So very difficult. Nothing is conclusive at the moment, frankly. It's what you tend to believe. And I think Dr. Noor Amunra also has done quite a lot of work explaining his stand, all that. But frankly, on diet, you can check. I don't think there's really well established. You can't say anything. It's just what you believe. I think Dr. Noor Amunra, I like him. I like how he writes, and I like his beliefs as well. I find many of them suiting me. But that's how I can say it suits me. Good.
And I think you're doing something that you're comfortable. That's okay.
If you have any questions, then this would be a good time.
Marius, see, I think you've done quite a bit of work on sleep as well, right? What are the things that you feel can be, because yoga nidra and all that, you were quite deep into it. And I wanted to know specifically with regard to yoga and what you feel are the essence of it, that somebody wants to practice it, but with the least effort and least time, and the main things that if you want to take up in yoga, what are the things that you would suggest? Because I see a lot of your videos are specific towards yoga.
This question is a very good one, especially that you say with the least time and the least effort. Well, yeah, definitely these things are also the measurements are also the nicest one, I feel. So one measurement, if we really want to enjoy life also and to spend least effort, they are very simple and they awaken a very exciting emotion in me also, like that I feel since I'm a child. Yeah, let's just name them. So definitely it's beautiful to have a candle in the evening, to switch off most electronic lights as possible. I mean, there are even yogic techniques where we just stare at the candle fire for a long time, but we don't even need to practice it. Like I said again, I feel that health in so many cases is not what we are missing to do, or that we have to do more and of this and that. Most of the time, health is inhibited by things that are disturbing us. So it's, first of all, if we want to keep the effort minimized, we just, first of all, we eliminate what is actually draining our energy. And definitely this is the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the cellular radiations. I have, excuse me, I have my phone actually in flight mode almost the whole day. Sorry. The whole day. And I just switch it on when I really need to make a call. And this is so important to me to mention, because in that area, for example, there's a lot of things happening, and there are already some research that that definitely lack in economic investment, where we need more research, and the effects of these things are not clear enough yet. But from my understanding, it's like if I have this with me in the bed or in my sleeping room and it's switched on, I don't see light, but the effect on the pineal gland, for example, that produces melatonin to sleep, is almost like someone flashes a light into my eyes. And we know when someone flashes light into our eyes, we're not tired. We don't want to sleep. So, I mean, it's beautiful. Let's use a candle. If we even can, let's have a fireplace where we sleep or where we live. If we want to use internet in the evening, no problem, but let's use a LAN cable. That's also fine. We can use it. We can activate a blue light filter on our screens. We can put on a blue light filter glass, and these are, I mean, we can buy them for $10 or $20 on the internet. Reduce the artificial lights. A very simple trick that I do is I switch on the light in the next room, but not in the room where I am. So I mean, it sounds stupid, but I can see what I'm doing. I can even read a book. I can still cook or whatever. or do what I want to do, but the light is much more indirect and it doesn't affect my whole hormone production so much. So it's these very simple tricks that I feel have a lot to do with yoga. So I mean, what is yoga? It's connection. And when I listen to my body, when I feel connected with my body, I don't want intense lights in the evening. I just feel very sensible. Yes, that is for sure one thing.
I mean, it's something that you've actually managed to do it.
Yes.
I mean, that's the difficult part, isn't it? It's a big decision. It impacts many things.
Is it? I mean, we can still use the internet. We can still do whatever we want to do in the night. Just reduce the light a little bit. I think it's that easy.
Yeah. No, that's. I've always preferred less light in the evenings. It just hurts my eyes. I didn't do it because of health, because it always hurts my eyes. I'm very sensitive to light, and always preferred less light during evenings at least. And but sometimes you're living with family, and members don't like. There's some people who like very bright light. So I usually function with very little light. But again, I'm not able to do it the way you're doing. But yeah. I think very valid points. And that's why I think even phone companies also have introduced the night mode on the phone, right? So it filters off the...
Yeah, that was at least a tiny step from them. That was nice. I think it doesn't filter out all the blue lights.
No, it doesn't.
But at least something. I mean, because this sun that is illuminating here, this is, I think, the only natural phenomenon, apart from the other stars, that emits blue light. I know nothing else. Maybe a flash, maybe a flash from in a torrent when there is heavy rain and so on. Maybe the
how's your practice of Hatha yoga going?
Well, the Hatha yoga, for me, it's actually very intense at the moment, but very short. It's 10 to 20 minutes a day. But yeah, you refer to literally the asanas and so on, right? Yeah.
No, it could be even pranayama. Could be meditation as well.
So yeah, well, in that sense,
what are you bought in more into? Because I think I remembered seeing you refer to yogic asanas and all that, right? Yeah. Or was it Ayurveda that you're more into?
No, yeah.
I want to know your name, Ayuscetic.
Yeah.
So
well, as far as I understood it, the Ayu is just life in Sanskrit. Right.
Okay.
The asana, the Hatha yoga at the moment is 20 minutes of very, very intense resistance exercise. But I don't practice it anymore late in the day, but usually at noon, more or less. I indeed like you have my morning walk, and I also would include the sun gazing in the morning and the evening into the Hatha yoga practice and the bare feet walking. And maybe another aspect actually are enemas. So, but I like when I evacuate naturally, after that, I also have an enema shower. And I think that makes, that would be rather Ayurvedic, right?
Yes. No, that's fine. I think a lot of civilizations have used it, right? The enema. I think...
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
That's fine. I think... that's about cleaning the colon and all that, right?
Yeah.
The Ayurvedic approach is similar. Either you use an enema or you take salt water. Take about a liter of salt water quickly. And that gives you a flush as well.
Also, yeah.
The other way around. Yeah. So you can choose either of the two. That's how it goes in Ayurveda. Yeah.
Yeah.
But typically, you go to any nature cure clinic in India, I think it would come with an enema for sure.
Definitely. And I also just remembered that there is another lovely thing that I fell in love with last year that definitely that definitely cannot miss after, in the end of the Hatha yoga, of the asana practice. And that is, I bought for very little money, like two, these are like two tools that I wrap around my ankles of the feet here like this, and they have a metal angle, and with this I literally hang myself on a bar upside, and I actually just relax and I just let myself hang down upside down.
Yes.
For as long as I feel comfortable. Sometimes I have like an audiobook listening or some music, and 10 minutes later I recognize that I'm still hanging there. But what happens is so nice because with the gravity, all the joints from my ankles up my hips, my spine just decompresses. And there's a lot of it's a whole body stretch, obviously. And I felt really confirmed also when I found some interesting studies that were showing, they did something very brutal to the animals in the experiment, but actually it helped the animals. They took birds and they put them in a structure of a full body stretch for 8 hours. So they were in a full body stretch for 8 hours, these birds. But what they showed is that in the 2 to 3 consecutive days, the birds experienced about an 800% growth in muscle size. So they became
in response to the stress.
In response to that stress, so they became like bodybuilder birds. And the interesting thing is that the kind of muscle fibers that are generated in stretches, they don't necessarily contribute to muscle strength, but to muscle volume, which also has a certain factor in the longevity, right? So that I felt really, really confirmed, and I allowed myself not before the resistance exercise, but after the resistance exercise, to be in this, I would call it like a yin asana, right? We don't practice the yang energy, but we practice yin energy. We just relax for as long as we want. And I can get into stretches in my legs and my hips that I cannot do on the floor without any tools. But with this gravity hanging upside down, it has done wonder on my legs and my hips. I enjoy it very much.
So you hang upside down, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, with your legs up.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, the
you
tool,
don't lose consciousness or something like that.
No. If I feel that my head is starting to pump too much, or I don't feel comfortable because maybe even if something feels like I want to vomit, well, I go down. But when I'm fasted, there is no problem at all, actually. Yeah. Yeah, it's literally a tool that I wrap around both ankles here, and there's a metal angle, and I put the legs upside, and I let the whole body hang down.
Okay. What if you just hang down with your hands?
Also,
it's a different effect, is it?
I do that, but then the stretch is more on the shoulders and the torso. But there's little to no stretch in the hips and the ankles and the lower spine.
Yes. And then you can't hang for long with your hands, because
a
minute is a long time.
Yeah, like 1 to 3 minutes, something like that is very long. Yeah.
Oh, so it's a lot. I think I could barely do a minute.
Yes. How is your resistance exercise designed at the moment?
Yes, I was earlier doing it every day.
Yes.
I didn't see that much of development. So what I did is I took up more of the intense workout one day and probably 2 days break, then come back on the fourth day.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that it benefited me more. I mean, I could feel much better. So I think this is what I've been doing for the last 3-4 months, and significant progress. Even in hypertrophy also. So that's the Mike Menzer way of training, right? There's a bodybuilder called Mike Menzer. He used to typically train one day and rest for 3 days and come back on the fifth day. Come and train
Menzer.
again. Mikementzer. He wrote the book called High Intensity Training.
Okay.
Very nice. I really liked it. And
homework.
So it's basically more of compound exercise.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that hint.
Because I tried working out hard. I could, but I didn't see growth. I didn't see that I was increasing in the amount of lift I was doing. But I think the breaks actually helped me quite a bit. You work out one day, don't work out 2 days, seems to be just perfect for someone who's natural. If you're consuming the right amount of amino acids, can you recover in a day? Probably, but I think it just, at the moment, for the next foreseeable 3 to 6 months, I think this suits me just fine. Work out one day, intense, take 2 days off from resistance training, or do yoga or do something else. I mean, you can do a lot more. Not exactly intense resistance, but probably do something else. Just be active and come back and lift more. So your intensity keeps going up. And you can see it with the breaks that your next workout is more intense because the load that you carry is even higher.
So now I'm very happy to hear this. I'm very happy to hear this progress and that you are progressively lifting more. That is just very, very important to me that you as a brother that you're experiencing this, that you're enjoying this.
But surprisingly, Marius, I've noticed on myself and with 2-3 more people, the maximum that you lift is somewhere at 48 hours of your fast. That's the maximum you can lift. I did a 5-day fast, about 4.5 days of fasting. I lifted every day. The amount that I could lift on my second day was the highest. That is at the 48th hour. That was the highest. I mean, it was very difficult for me after refeeding also to even lift that much. My personal record was over there. And I'm talking about bench press. And, I mean, it's a compound exercise. And I just couldn't lift that much the first day, but the second day I could lift more.
That's a very interesting experiment. Because we could probably find out that everyone has a certain peak moment.
Yeah.
And maybe only that, we can individually adapt the feeding and fasting windows to the peak moment.
Yeah. It's just that your repetitions take longer to do. The rest between repetitions go up more after 48 hours. You need to rest a little longer before you can repeat the set. Yeah. But your lifting is still fairly very good.
Yeah.
Your lifting on your day 3 is better than your lift on your day 1 at 24 or 22, 23 hours of fasting. I mean, didn't understand. You can correlate it to a lot of things. You can guess saying there's more growth hormone, there's more testosterone. You can say all that, but I mean, somewhere we have to ask from where are we getting the energy to lift like that?
How is the son actually, the family? How are they?
Yeah, family is fine. My son's about 13 and he's exploring things.
Good.
And he thankfully seems to have identified some of his interests and he's focusing more on them. So that gives them direction and, for some time. How's your family?
Also good. Well, I just moved here actually this weekend, and the son lives in the neighbor house, like 2 minutes per feet. And so he comes here to me whenever he wants to share. We maybe watch a movie together, or we eat something, or we just sit on the floor. He plays with toys and I read a book. He's 5 years old. And it just feels so good to see him again, because I haven't seen him until last November for almost 2 years. Yeah.
You did say your wife and kid are in Colombia, right? And you were in Germany that time.
Yeah, well, the mother of the boy and me, we don't live in a relation anymore.
Yeah.
We are just the parents of him, exactly. And I was in Germany in 2020 and 21 with parents and brothers. Yeah, but it feels really good to be here and to hug him, to give him kisses, and to just laugh with him about silly things, maybe. And yeah, these simple. It really fills my heart.
Very nice. So you're in Colombia right now, or
yeah,
Germany?
Exactly, Colombia.
How long is your trip here?
To India?
No, in Colombia. Have you kind of moved completely to Colombia, or it's a
probably? I think
trip?
I will go back to Europe sometimes, maybe for professional reasons. Also, if the political situation allows it. But right now, I think it's important to be close to the sun also.
Okay. Yeah. But many happy moments for you.
But when they lock it down, for example, where you are, how do you do for, do you have any tricks or any ways to escape the house?
I think we've had 2 lockdowns in India. I don't think there's another lockdown that's planned, because it's hurting livelihood and a lot more. And I think they've kind of figured it out that even with a lockdown, you're not exactly stopping the spread of the virus, right?
No, yeah, right.
Seems to be more intelligent than us. And it's airborne, for sure. So it can't have this kind of a spread otherwise so quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. Yeah, but for us, we live in a kind of a community, a gated community where you can walk around. There's not many rules inside the community.
Good, yeah.
So there are a lot of trees, all that. So within the community, we could walk, but outside, there could be measures.
Perfect.
Other than that, it's a very simple life. Most of my work is on the phone. So the entire work I've done for my company, which is The Fasting Studio, everything has happened only on phone. I've met very few people. So even these cases, it's all happened in the lockdown, and I could just review them on the phone.
And does it still work like that? That you basically you admit the people into the group if they want to join after paying the entrance fee, so to say.
That's right. See, there is a WhatsApp group that I've got. The WhatsApp group, there's 2 functions of the group. One is I like to communicate with members, specifically as blogs. All these blogs, I just put it in that WhatsApp group itself, because I don't share any content outside. I don't make YouTube videos. I don't post anything outside, because the work is fairly deep and
interesting what you say.
It's very specific and very deep. People need to first be interested in that level of depth, and secondly, people should be interested as such in their health. It's not for knowledge sake that somebody just goes through my blogs and all. I'm not interested in that. Because see, it's like what you're talking. You're practicing something. If somebody just wants to know what else is there in the world, he asks you a question, you don't feel, because you're too passionate about what you're doing. So that's the reason I kept it as a closed community. Usually share all my views inside it. all the analysis, all the new inputs, everything is put there, but also for a sense of camaraderie, and also which helps me follow up with them, because we track progress of members.
So nice.
Because people need what I've seen in fasting is they need to know that many people are also not eating, because the toughest thing for a person when he's fasting is the kind of thoughts that come in. It's your own body giving you that thoughts, because your body is designed to always keep looking. Your mind is designed to always keep looking for food, because that's the only profession that you actually had much before. From many thousands of years, that's the only profession we had, seek food.
Yeah.
So you tend to think that you're missing out and people around you are having a nice time. You always keep thinking like that. That's one of the things that I've seen that is typically tempting people not to continue a fasting routine. If they can be put into a community, they just need to know there are 100 other people who are also not eating. That kind of just knowing that itself is support.
Powerful.
It's not even speaking to them. They just need to know 100 other people are not eating actually.
Yeah.
That's enough. You can draw support and you know that it's fine. It's fine to not eat. You can wait for some time. See, otherwise, what can I say? Life is right now. It's just in being. You tell someone, don't eat now, he starts asking a lot of questions. By the time you fully understand what is fasting, it takes a few weeks. So I would say that's the support that people need. They need to be in some community where some more people are doing. It's not that you need to brainwash them. It's not that you need to tell them something, tracking them. All that is there. You just need to know there are other people who are doing it. That's it. That's all is required actually. Because I did it on my own and I was criticized by all around me and continue doing it. And we shouldn't expect people to be as biased as we are. We were too biased. We wanted it to work. We would have done it. And we did it. It so happened that fasting helps. Even otherwise, we would have still done it because it appeals to us. Isn't it, Marius?
Yeah, indeed. I went silent in the moment when you said that you don't invest the time to make a lot of public online content because the work with the group is so deep. And I admit that I have experienced something similar while doing a lot of public online content, is that sometimes then I lack the energy actually and the time.
Marius, if you're going to be very careful with your communication in such a way that you can't even give a message, it's better you don't speak at all there. Correct, right? See, you're choosing platforms to speak. You speak to your family members in a certain way because they give you a certain comfort. They just want to know what's in your mind. Not necessarily at the workplace, you're going to go speak your mind. You're going to filter it out. You're going to say it exactly the way they want to listen or the way you're permitted to speak. So if you look at the public forums, when you speak, we are all limited. We are not allowed to speak in a certain manner. We not speak what we believe in and speak what we've seen working. So why speak at all? Why make a mockery of the truth and speak something that's diluted? If I speak, I would speak something that is just what I have seen and what I want people to consider. That's it. And that can only be spoken in a closed community. You can give it to them and people are sensible enough to check if the knowledge is right or not. And anyway, people, all their actions are voluntary. If someone's eating sugar, that's also voluntary.
The connection cut off and we had a closing post-conversation via Facebook Messenger. He asked me whether my expectations were fulfilled and that the conversation was very long. We thank each other, and for a possible next conversation, there are many more topics to explore. For example, how does fasting impact different kinds of diseases?
Hey. Indeed, very rich conversation. I was about to answer to you actually, and I had no expectation, and I just feel that I was overwhelmed by blessing and by this beautiful conversation with you.